Okay, it's 6 o'clock. I'm calling the September 26, 2023 Beaverton Urban Redevelopment Agency meeting to order. Will the recorder please call the roll?
Chair Tivnon.
Here.
Sorry. Board Director Hartmeyer Prigg.
Here.
Board Director Ulven.
Present.
Board Director Kimmy.
Here.
Board Director Vitko.
Here.
Board Director Duggar.
Here.
Board Director Teeter.
Here.
Understanding is the mayor is absent. Board Director Hassan.
Present.
Board Director Kim.
Here.
Board Director Walton.
Here.
Okay, thank you. First on the agenda is visitor comments. Visitor comments allow visitors to speak to the Bureau Board about matters not included on tonight's agenda for a public hearing. For example, in a few minutes, we will have a public hearing on the Beaverton Central Garage expanded rates and programs. If you're here to comment on the rates and programs for the Beaverton Central Garage, please hold your comments until we formally open the public hearing on the budget. If you wish to speak on a matter not scheduled as a public hearing on tonight's agenda, now is your time. City Recorder, do we have anyone here to address the Bureau Board?
No.
Thank you. We'll now move on to board communications. Do any board members have any information they'd like to share with the rest of the board and the interim executive director?
Chair, I would love to bring something up.
Board member Teeter.
Thanks. I have an interest in having a in-person option for Bureau board meetings, and I spent the last hour trying to get my computer to work, and it keeps crashing, so I'm on my laptop. But I would love to be able to have an in-person option so that I can be with those of you who can make it in person. City Council just went in person for the month of September, and we're going to keep doing that on an ongoing basis. I would love to have a hybrid option for when people are traveling or out of town, but I would love to get some other people's thoughts, see where you all are at, where you all are with that.
Let's open it up to the group here. Does anyone have any thoughts they'd like to share? Craig?
If you don't mind,
Yeah,
I'd like to weigh in on that. I do think I'd like a chance to take that offline. There are capacity and staffing issues that go along with managing a size of bureau. So I'd like an opportunity to go back and assess the impacts of that, if that would be all right with the board. I'd also want to, from a policy perspective, talk with the council about that as well, given we've had discussions about in-person and virtual meetings. If that's okay, Councilor Teeter.
Yeah, I see board member Olven's hand up and Hartmeyer Prigg as well, as if they have any comments, but I'd be okay with that if we can get some more information at the next board meeting.
My only comment was that our board of directors meeting is immediately before this meeting, so I would likely be challenged to get there in person every time. No other policy level input.
Yeah, let's gather some more input for the city manager and then we'll table it for tonight. Board member Hartmeyer Prigg.
I really just wanted to know the staff impact of it. I personally think us being virtual makes this meeting a lot more accessible to people to participate. So I would prefer it to stay, but I really think that the staff perspective and how to manage that from the workload is like the biggest influence for me.
Board member Hassan.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with board member Hartmeyer Prigg. I do love our in-person meetings. So if that's something that's not a big lift, I'd love to see that happen, but I would be supportive either way. I do think what I appreciate is for all of our meetings that are now in person, we can still participate via Zoom. So I'm pretty open, but I like the idea. I think it feels like we get more done when we're in person and conversations are more productive personally. Thank you.
Other feedback? Okay. All right. Well, city manager, maybe do some work behind the scenes to figure out what the lift of this would be, and just let us know what the feasibility of it is. The next meeting, perhaps. Okay. All right. Normally on the agenda, this is the approval of minutes, but we do not have any minutes to consider tonight. So we will now move on to tonight's business items. The first item on the agenda is a public hearing on Bureau Bill 2023-62, resolution number 2023-060, public hearing on Beaverton Central Garage expanded rates and programs. Before we begin, I will explain how people can participate in this hearing. Anyone wishing to speak at this hearing should follow the instructions included on tonight's agenda. If you've joined the meeting by phone, you can enter *9 to let the city recorder know you wish to speak. Alternatively, if you've joined this meeting online, you can let the city recorder know you wish to speak by clicking on the raised hand feature. After each person speaks, board members may ask questions of the speaker. Now it's time for the staff presentation. Molly, good evening to you. Please go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, board members. And thank you for letting me come back, as we were planning to discuss this in July. And so I appreciate the opportunity to come back in September and have this discussion. As you know, we opened the Beaverton Central Garage in February of 2022. And in discussions with Bureau, decided to only have hourly and daily rates to begin with, to see what the utilization of the garage looked like over the course of the first year or so, and said that we would come back with additional program considerations after we saw how things were going. So here we are. We've been open for almost 18 months, and that's very exciting, or right at 18 months. And so far, you know, we're pleased with how garage operations are going, but we would love to see some higher utilization in the garage. So for that, we've come up with a few expanded rates and programs that we think would help bolster utilization in the garage, as well as meet some community needs, as we've had a number of these programs brought to us by community members for consideration. I'm going to share my screen, I hope.
We can see it now, Molly.
Can you see the presentation or the edited? Or the
We see the presentation in view mode. It looks good.
Okay. Okay, great. And is it moving?
It is.
Okay, great. Thank you. So as you know, the other piece of this consideration is coming to you with not to exceed rates for all of these programs. We did this with the electric vehicle chargers in the garage maybe 6 months ago with Bureau, and we find that it's an effective tool for allowing us to make incremental changes without the process of going back with the promise to you all that we wouldn't exceed a certain rate without coming back to Bureau for further approval. So part of tonight's presentation is also a consideration of not to exceed rates of these programs. To begin with, our current hourly and daily rates are $1 an hour up to 8 hours, $15 for the day or for 24 hours, and $18 if you lose your ticket. We are proposing no changes to those base rates right now, but we are proposing not to exceed rates of $2.50 an hour, $22 for a flat rate for 24 hours, and a lost ticket fee of $25. I'll place a caveat on all of this by saying that all of this would be demand-based. So we'd be looking at rates in the around the city, in the region. We'd be looking at the usage in the garage, and we would be looking at sort of the turnover and how effective those rates are. So we wouldn't do a huge jump. That would not be an effective parking management tool. But these rates would be for consideration over time. I'm going to kind of go through this so that we can get to the questions and answers. monthly parking. That's kind of our biggest question that we get from our community is, can I buy a monthly permit in the garage? Up until now, we have not had a monthly permit. So we've looked around the city at what monthly rates are, and there is a wide range. We've seen about a minimum of $75 a month to a maximum of, in Portland, up to $250 a month. And even in Beaverton, we've seen up to $150 a month at some residential locations. So our proposed base rates are $80 a month for general monthly parking, a reduced rate based on income qualifications of $45, a swing shift rate, which would be sort of off hours when you wouldn't see peak demand in the garage, of $40, and then a reduced income-based swing shift rate of $20. Again, that not to exceed rate, relatively high, but up to $125 a month. Obviously, with program terms and conditions applied to it. Next, an event parking rate. So this is another one of those things where many people attending the RESER have come to us and said, why can't we just pay when we drive in? So this is a prepay event parking rate proposal, $6 per vehicle, so flat rate, with a not to exceed rate of $10 over time. And this would go into place for events at the RESER, or we've done other small events, in the district. Night market would be one of those things that we could look at applying an event rate to, things along those lines. Prepaid parking validations. Validation programs are heavily used by local businesses. And the city has used validation for events in the garage. And there are two types of validation that our system can provide. One is providing a number of hours. So a restaurant could come to us and say, we'd like to provide all of our patrons two hours worth of parking. And we would look at what the hourly rates are, and they would prepay for their validations, and then they could validate their customers. Or they could say, we want to validate $3 worth of our customers' parking. And so we would do that math. They'd figure out how many validations they want. They'd prepay for that. The difference between the two is that if somebody says they want 2 hours worth, but somebody stays for 4 hours, then the user is still responsible for those additional 2 hours. Same would go as if somebody paid for $3, but they stayed for 5 hours and their charge was $5, they would still be responsible for those $2. So we also can do percentages, but they can get really messy. So we would prefer to stick to the hourly and the dollar amounts. And the prices would be based on whatever our current rates are. So there's not a not to exceed rate on this program. And then the last one is actually monthly bike storage. So we built a beautiful long-term storage bike room in the base, in the ground level of the garage. And we put in 32 bike racks and hanging racks in there. Our land use requirement was 16. And so we've had a number of district users come to us and ask if they can also use the bike storage. This bike storage would remain available to the tenants of the garage, the retail tenants of the garage, and the RESER employees at no charge. That is part of their land use agreement. This would be for additional use of the bike storage. Currently, we usually see about one bike in there at most. So it's not a heavily utilized space, and we have a lot of interest in it. So current or proposed rate is $20 per bike. That is the same as what the city of Portland charges, and a not to exceed rate of $40 per bike. With that, I welcome sorry, I flew through that, but I'm happy to answer any questions and any clarifications.
Great. Thank you, Molly. If you could stop sharing your screen so we could see each other. And then if you have a question, just add your name to the chat. Are there any questions for Molly? Board member Teeter.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Molly, my question relates to the not to exceed rates. How did you all land on the specific numbers that we've got in the report here?
Most of the numbers are coming from what we're seeing regionally. And knowing that costs are going up everywhere. I want to be very clear that it could take years and years and years to get there. This would be completely based on demand and utilization, and we would do small incremental changes. And we would also propose, this was not in the agenda bill, so I apologize. We would also propose not doing more than 2 rate adjustments in a year. So like every 6 months or so, looking at what our utilization is, what our current rates are, what are the rates in the region, and go from there. We have a few private entities that have started looking at paid parking in the Beaverton area. Their rates are higher than the ones that we have proposed here, even the not to exceed. Does that help?
When you say we have a few folks in Beaverton who are doing higher rates than the not to exceed, are those apartment complexes or somebody else?
Commercial and apartment.
Okay. My train of thought here and thinking about that is the Portland rates look like they're about $200 a month. So I would support having a higher not to exceed rate that matches the Portland metro area. Is there any reason why we shouldn't do that?
No, there's no reason. We could definitely consider a higher rate. These were based more on the not to exceed on monthly parking specifically was based mostly on what we're seeing in Beaverton in downtown for residential rates. That's where that 125 came from. Although as I mentioned, we have seen rates as high as 150.
Okay, that's good to know. And then the bike parking storage area, you said that there's interest in that space. When people share their interest, are they also sharing a range of rates that they would actually be willing to pay?
The folks that have come to us with that question, it runs the gamut. Can we just have access to I'm willing to pay? And the rate we propose is what Portland charges for monthly parking in their facilities. And the folks who said they're willing to pay, it seems reasonable to them.
Okay, thanks.
Member Decker?
So yeah, I have a few questions. And just to clarify, this is because I think I might have missed this. So we're in the public hearing part of this. So it's just informational questions. Is that correct? Okay, sorry. Long day. A couple questions though. I'll start with this one. Is this board actually required to set a rate rather than a strategy or a policy? Let me give you an example, right? What if we charge you just fill up the garage and generate as much market rate parking as possible, right? Rather than us set the rates, because that feels like to me, I don't have expertise on parking. Like, I feel like, if we just say generate the maximum amount of revenue, account for various different users, right? Different economic situations. I trust you, I empower you. Are we statutorily, whatever that word is, required to set the rate? Or is that something we can just kind of maintain as is?
I can perhaps take that, Molly, if you want.
Thank you.
Okay. Oregon law requires that when government sets a fee, there be a hearing of some sort, an opportunity for people to comment. So as we set fees, we need to have hearings like this. What Molly's suggesting is authorize a range not to exceed, and up until you hit the limit, we would no longer have to come back. But I think that without a dollar amount, the concept that you were talking about, Board Member Duggar, of go forth and fill the parking garage at whatever rate is appropriate would probably be too vague.
Okay.
But that concept, I think, is what Molly's trying to work at in terms of here's a not to exceed amount, and you'll delegate to Molly and staff the authority to set the rate at or below that maximum amount.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. And that's kind of what I figured, but I just wanted to clarify. What is the current financial situation of the garage from an operating financial perspective? I think we're in the hole, right? Like, help me understand the picture operationally.
Yes. Yeah. So we are in the hole, and we were expecting to remain in the hole for the first 3 to 5 years of operation. That's relatively standard for a parking garage. I'm pleased with the fact that within the first year of operation, we made 6 figures on our daily parking. So we made over $100,000 in the first year. And that covers about half of our operational contract with our vendor at SP Plus. That's not to say that it covers the full, half of the full cost of operating the garage, but of our vendor. And we are seeing an increase in interest in the garage. Obviously, these programs would meet some of the demand of the community and bring more revenue into that facility.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm assuming we have like a plan to get to operational stability there, but that's for a different conversation.
Yes.
We keep it to the public here. And I think my final question is, there's a nearby hotel that I believe does not have specific parking or has very limited parking. Have we thought about, because I didn't see that unless I missed it, is an option. Have we thought about special rates for the hotel and for their guests?
We have not proposed special rates for the hotel. We do have the daily rate of $15, which is actually less than their valet rate at the hotel. So it is, and we have worked with the hotel on the concept that your folks can self-park at our garage. The concept of adding to their valet and like sharing rates with them gets really complicated, and also requires some reserved spaces, which we're not yet willing to relinquish. But from a self-parking perspective, we've discussed the concept of hotel rates, but given that it's a district garage, it's simpler to have people pay the daily rate instead of trying to coordinate like hotel keys and things along those lines.
Yeah, I was just thinking of like co-marketing, right? Like, do the people staying in the hotel know that garage is there and available, and like that might be worth a small discount on the daily rate. If we offered something like a 5% or something minimal, right? But just so the hotel is pushing people over there.
Yep, I appreciate
Not
that.
for valet, just for kind of self-parking. But anyway, that was the last of my questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Board Member Husson.
Sure, I might a little bit disagree with Board Member Duggar. I'm like, hotel guests, like pay up. It's like, hold on. It's okay that she's running into the photo. It's totally fine. Thank you. Sorry. I would say my one comment I support. Thank you, Molly. I know you did an excellent job putting this together. I think if there were anything, if we were talking about increasing like a monthly or a yearly, or decreasing a monthly or a yearly, please. I would be fine. I think my one comment would be anything to do with small businesses, like our smaller businesses, making sure that we partner with them in some way. And so if you land at 80 is great. Do we want to talk with a Brick House Coffee, who's a small local business whose employees might want a discounted rate? I think I would be okay with that if for future thinking. And then hotels and like bigger organizations and companies can pay a little bit more. So those are just my 2 cents on that. While there's absolute chaos going off in my room, so I'm going to go on mute. Thank you so much.
Thank you. One thing I did not mention in the presentation, which I will include, is that we have legal agreements with Scanlon Kemper Bard and with the Lofts at the Round that they already have permits to be in the garage. And until everybody agrees to pay for everything, nobody pays. The lofts pay a maintenance fee to be in their space, and Scanlon Kemper Bard pays a percentage of our operational costs, but they're tenants on that ground floor. And so everybody in what's lot 4 of the round, their folks don't see that charge. It's the business, it's the property owners that are responsible for that.
Board Member Teeter.
Thanks. I just got one more question for follow-up. Molly, I'm curious about how this ties in with our current parking enforcement program for street parking and potential future plans or possibilities for paid on street parking. And the reason why I ask this is because I do support charging for our parking garage. But if we're not charging for street parking, people will not be encouraged to park there if they don't have a monthly permit. So I'm just curious how that all kind of connects.
So the goal of having sort of multiple options for folks is for folks to be able to choose what works best for them. So short-term parking for 2 hours on street might work best for somebody coming to Brick House Coffee or going out to dinner. Long-term parking, because most of the parking, particularly in Beaverton Central, is 2 hours, that the goal would be to get people to use the parking garage by providing them with either an hourly or a daily or a monthly rate, depending on how frequently they come to the area. On-street enforcement, if there's no enforcement, then the 2 hours is irrelevant. And so if we enforce the 2 hours and somebody wants to be there for 3, they have to look for alternatives. And so that's sort of how it's all linked. Does that answer your question?
Yep, that is very helpful. Thank you.
Anyone else that wants to ask questions of staff? Okay. All right. I'm now going to open the hearing and take public comment. City Recorder, is there anyone here to speak on the proposed resolution?
Board Member Tivnon, it looks like there is somebody who has a raised hand. I'm not sure if they're here for the public hearing, but I can let them talk and see if maybe they would like to make a comment.
All right, let's do that.
Can y'all hear me?
We can.
Thank you. I'm Mary Beth Buffum. I am with the HOA at Lofts of the Round, and so we park on the upper floors. I have a comment and a question. My comment is on the monthly rates. I know that for the surface lot behind the garage, Dana BG charges $150 a month. And the rates at the ARC 2 years ago were $125 to $150, depending on whether you were covered or not. So I worry that the rates you're starting off with are too low. My question is, I know that for various neighborhoods, there are restrictions you can get on-street parking permits. And so I'm wondering if there will be any preference for people who want monthly parking to either reside in the neighborhood or in the neighborhood, or if just anybody can get monthly parking as it's available.
Molly, before you answer that, I just also want to let board members know that you can also ask questions of Mary Beth. So Mary Beth, please stay on the line while we're addressing your question. Molly, do you have insight into Mary Beth's question?
Yes, I think initially we have a cap on the number of permits that because we have a finite amount of space. So we would put a cap on it. I think initially we would probably open it up to whoever has interest. Most of the folks who have interest are folks who work or live in the area that have expressed interest to us. If we reach capacity, then we may have to look at some sort of weighted wait list, but without if we have available permits, we would rather sell the available permits to folks who are interested than to create a sort of a weighted evaluation of who is applying.
Okay. Does anyone on the board have a question, follow-up question for Mary Beth? Okay, seeing none. Mary Beth, do you have any other questions that you would like to ask during the public hearing?
No, I do meet with Molly and Tyler regularly. I just today saw all of this, but I do have concerns, you know, parking's $200 a month and up in Portland, you know, people from around here getting cheaper parking in this garage and taking Max into town when there are residents. For example, most of our residents only have one spot in our area, and we have a lot of residents who need another parking space and are always asking about that. And there are limited availability. And again, at $80 a month, that's great, but that's compared to $150 for a unguarded surface lot. So I'm just concerned that those rates are too low, to be honest.
It looks like we have some questions about board member Kimmy.
No, I'll just gonna make comment at the end. So never mind.
Okay, all right, we'll remember that. Board member Hassan.
Yeah, I don't know if this is a question or comment, but what I'm hearing, which I would agree with, is there some sort of prioritization process around who can and can't get access to these spots? And I would support making sure that, you know, like residents, business owners, right, like
It looks like Councillor Hassan, you're breaking up a little bit. Okay, well, we'll come back to board member Hassan if her Wi-Fi comes back online. Let's see here. City Recorder, is there anyone else wishing to ask a question?
No, Chair Tivnon.
Okay, all right. If you could take down the timer so we can see each other again. Oh, it looks like Mary Beth, did you raise your hand again?
No, I'm just not that digitally savvy. Is my hand down now?
It is, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I think everyone's looking forward to weighing in on this when we get to discussion after this question period. City Recorder, it looks like there was no one else, just to confirm that, wishing to comment?
That is correct, Chair Tivnon.
Great, okay, thank you. Okay, all right, I will now close the public hearing. What is the pleasure of the board? Is there a motion?
Our chair, I move that we adopt resolution number 2023-060.
I will second.
It's been moved by board member Hartmeyer Prigg, seconded by board member Olvin. Do we have any discussion? Okay, let's see here. Who came in first? I think it was board member Teeter.
Yeah, thank you. I think there are a couple of changes that I would like to see as part of this. And some of the background as I think about this is monthly transit passes with TriMet are $100 per month. So the monthly passes for car parking would be cheaper than a monthly TriMet pass, which we would love people to take more transit there. The bike parking spaces, you can fit about 10 bikes within one car parking space. So when I think about the bike parking cost, I would like to see those more in line with like 10% of the cost of a car parking permit. So if a car permit for a month is $100, then bike parking permit would be $10 a month, for an example. But as far as my specific amendments that I'm thinking of as we go into this discussion section, I would actually support having the not to exceed for monthly car parking permits being $200 to staff have that flexibility as the market adjusts, as more housing comes in and as downtown becomes more and more vibrant. And then a lower not to exceed permit cost for bike parking that closer to $10 a month. But I would love to hear other discussion comments from other board members before I make any amendment.
Okay, I'm going to just break in with my thoughts here really quick. So I was just reading in the papers not too long ago that they're actually shuttering some parking garages in downtown Portland because they are so underutilized that the cost of just security and maintaining them is far outpacing what they're bringing in revenue, and they just are not seeing the demand. And I thought to myself, why don't they lower the prices? Why don't they try and get people to come in there? But that's a different situation happening in Portland. And it got me thinking about how they set the rates there, because obviously you go to a larger city like Portland or even Seattle, parking rates are extremely high. And it's because of capacity. And it's also because there's a lot of other options, and they're trying to reroute people to take different modes of transportation into a specific area. We haven't done the improvements in this district to make it an easy and safe option for lots of people to get there on bike and on foot throughout the surrounding area. So I think that we're probably going to see people taking their cars to get in. And if you're coming from north or south, transit can also be tricky, unless east to west is easier with Max. So I'm assuming that what we're trying to do is incentivize people to come to the district, use the garage to go to the Reeser, to go to city run events, to go visit the coffee shops and the other shops that are opening up in the area. So my first inclination is to keep it affordable for right now. And as far as the bike parking, I think that Portland's approach that was to make it as affordable as possible and keep incentivizing people to bring their bike in and store it. So I don't know exactly where the number came from, because it sounded like you tried to make it the same as what you're seeing elsewhere in the region. Those are my initial thoughts on it. And then as far as the not to exceed, when we do at some point down the road get to where we have hit the ceiling on that, I'm assuming that then opens it up again for a future Bureau board to discuss increasing that. And at that point, maybe some of the improvements we've been talking about, like the loop project, have been done to where it is more feasible for folks to safely get in on bike and foot. And maybe TriMet has expanded out more options for our folks that are coming into the district. I know they have their board meeting tomorrow morning that's happening in council chambers, so it's timely. Anyway, those were my thoughts. Just throw them out there for consideration. Board member Kimmy.
I just have a question and a comment where I know public, the caller called in also that the residents of our condo there and are getting charged a lot more than what your monthly rate is. I want to hear what's the reasoning behind offering monthly rate, and then providing the spaces for the residents who gets a priority, and what qualifies as a resident, where people who can afford to pay a lot more, maybe they could come and buy 2 or 3 of them and then offer as their guest parking or whatever. So I was just wondering how you're going to control it and the spacing that's available, and how is that going to be conflicted with the people who's already paying a lot more than what we're supposed to charge. I don't know who's going to answer that question.
If you want, I can start, but Molly may have some more information. But if I'm understanding the question correctly, Board Member Kimmy, there are legal agreements in place that make it that the residents at the Round have rights to park there and have responsibilities as well. That predates Beaverton from even owning anything here. The same thing carries through for the SKB, the primary owner of the properties. They have some legal rights and responsibilities that essentially predate Beaverton having any ownership at the Round. So these have carried forward with regard to those residents and those local businesses. And there's really no opportunity to change that in any practical sense. With regard to the question about people that either live in the area or work in the area, I think Molly addressed that to some degree, that initially try to fill the garage, and then later, if there is excess demand, maybe think about prioritizing. But Molly, I don't know if that answers everything, Board Member Kimmy, but Molly, do you have anything more to add?
Yeah, I would just add that these rates are actually, the proposed monthly rates are actually higher than the maintenance rate that the lofts at the round owners are paying. So the monthly in the public parking area exceed what they are paying, so they are not paying more. I would add also that the lofts at the round residents specifically have nested gated reserved parking at the top of the garage. So these permits that we are proposing would have no impact on their access to their spaces, which are deeded rights in our legal agreements. They have full reserved access to that area. That is, and these spaces for monthly parking would be similar to what you see when we come into the Milliken garage, where we come in and it's first come, first serve. We use a lot of math to balance figuring out how many permits to offer versus what kind of usage we see in the garage to make sure that those folks holding monthly permits find a parking space. It may not be the same parking space every day. And so theirs would be unreserved versus what the lofts are experiencing. SKB's users, their tenants that have permits in the garage right now, they have unreserved spaces as well. And so we would be looking at their balance and our permit numbers as well as our daily usage to come up with that right sizing.
Okay, that answered all my questions. Thank you.
Before I move on to Board Member Duggar, Board Member Hassan, you had broken up when you were speaking earlier. I think you were, before you broke up, you were talking about prioritizing, I think, folks that live in the district or work in the district, but if you wanted to finish that thought, please do.
Sure. So sorry. And it was more like, is there a prioritization process, Molly, that we can ensure that we have, to make sure that folks who have access to the garage are sort of like our residents or our businesses? And I don't even know that we need to be at that level, but if you have any thoughts or comments to that, I'm sorry for cutting out.
No worries. We all have technical difficulties. I think that right now, the interest that has been expressed to us is those residents and those business owners that are nearby and the employees that are nearby. I think that we could look at it as a matter of how it's advertised. We go to those places first, see what the demand looks like, and sort of ripple out from there. And we'd be happy to take that approach. But as we've sort of jumped around, the concept of let's fill the garage, let's get the permits going. And if we didn't have enough demand in those local, right in the general vicinity, we'd want to look outside of that. And then, of course, as things turn over, because people move on and they might decide they want to get rid of their car and take transit, that we then we can figure out if that wait list then kind of goes back and looks at those locations in comparison.
Thank you.
Board Member Duggar.
Thanks, Chair. Couple things. My number one goal with this, without having any expertise on parking, I live close by. I've never parked there other than special events. Is my goal will be to transition this garage from essentially a financial liability in the short term to an income generating asset as quickly as possible. So when I think about like how do we do that, I think the number one thing for me is giving the maximum flexibility to Molly and team in order to do that. And I would actually support a larger range an amendment supporting a larger range of pricing for cars. I'll tell you why. Even on the lower end and the higher end. So I would support something like a $40 to a $200. The reason being, we might need promotional rates. You know, maybe the economy goes into a downturn or something. And I don't necessarily think we need to come back to this board every single time to make a professional decision. We have professional parking people in place. You know, like I think the goal should be to maximize that revenue generating asset with whatever means we have necessary. So I would actually support for the car parking an amendment to change that range from 40 to 200. I also think I completely agree with Board Member Teeter that I would support an amendment on bike parking. I know the demand isn't much right now, but that's where the incentive tool comes in. Let's face it, we're not as easy to bike in as Portland right now. And so we need to think about creating an incentive structure that gets people to bike down, right, and to park. I don't know if people are still going to do that on a monthly basis. We do have the trains and transit right there. So I think we, again, I'm thinking maximum flexibility for Molly and the city staff in order to do that, because I would love to see that bike parking filled up too. And the easiest tool that we have is that range. And so I would like to see that bike the minimum come down to maybe $10 as Councilor or as Board Member Teeter suggested. And then I could support this bill. Thank you.
Board Member Walton.
Yeah, hi. I just only comment from my side is sort of similar, so I'll keep it short, is I would definitely say a higher range. So there's more flexibility as sort of unknowns become knowns. Only other comment is prices are quite sticky. And so I would sort of say anywhere where you feel like there's traction, maybe go a little higher, because if there's not enough demand, $10 off is not going to improve that. And so some of these things, pricing is not going to get us there. And so don't go low thinking that people are going to come and park, because if you start too low, that then is harder over time to go up. So only 2 comments. Thank you.
And I have a process question for City Attorney. We have a motion on the floor to approve the resolution as written. It doesn't sound like there's a dollar amount that has been landed on. So what would the amendment be?
Well, we need to have a specific amendment is one way of doing it. And we have a resolution here, and I'm not quite sure. The last section of it talks about the not to exceed maximum. I think I've heard some discussion that would maybe change some numbers in that matrix. And then I believe that the price per month, the schedule at the very beginning, is also something that might be changed by the discussion that was heard. But unless you have specific changes to those line items, we can't deal with a general amendment. Like what we have right now is a very general discussion. So I think either someone makes an amendment to amend the main motion to change out some numbers and specifically call out what those numbers are and where they are in the resolution. Or the other option would be to, again, I hate to do this, but it would be to table this for a later discussion, but that just prolongs Molly having to try to guess what the numbers would be that would be satisfactory to the majority of the board. Does that help answer the question? Right now, you have a main motion adopted as is, and if someone wants to amend it, specific amendments where, and that's where we are procedurally.
Okay. Yeah, so it seems like that. And then unless someone wants to come forward with numbers in a specific amendment, assuming that the first motion fails, then we would vote on that. Otherwise, we table it and ask Molly to go back to the drawing board and come up with new numbers. Is that what I was hearing from you?
Yeah, I think you should probably ask. I think some people chimed in on the chat, but there might be in there someone who wants to make that type of motion to amend the main motion.
Okay. Board Member Teeter.
Yes, I am willing to make an amendment. I do see the name in the chat if she wants to chime in with anything before I make a motion. I welcome that.
Nope, I was going to make an amendment, so go for it.
Okay, I'll just start with one to keep it simple. I would like to amend the motion on the floor and change the monthly parking for all rates, the not to exceed maximum, from $125 up to $200.
I'll second.
All right, at this point, there's an opportunity to discuss the motion. It's very limited. And then after the discussion, there would be a vote on whether to amend. If the amendment passes, then we can talk about what happens. But at this point, there's been a motion, a second. Any discussion from the chair would ask for, and then there would be a vote on the amendment.
Okay, so the original motion that was on the floor is no longer on the floor. This amendment is.
Technically, there's two motions on the floor. The main motion still exists with an opportunity to amend it. You're going to find out whether that amendment is going to occur. And if it does occur, it modifies the main motion. And then we would end up either voting on the main motion, or if there's further amendments, we could go through that process. But I think right now, the question that you want to ask is there any further discussion? And once we resolve that issue, okay, the motion to amend is to change the monthly parking all rates from $125 not to exceed maximum to $200. All in favor say aye, all opposed say no. Okay.
And that amendment only applies to the monthly rates. It does not apply to the hourly rate. Was that correct, Board Member Teeter?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the not to exceed maximum. So just giving staff more flexibility to adjust the rates as needed, but increasing the range of those rates.
Okay. All right. Is there any discussion from our fellow board members?
Just clarifying, we're about to vote on an amendment, correct? The amended. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. I'll just throw out for discussion. I would be in support of that. My biggest hang up is on the hourly rates and just making sure that we are incentivizing as much as possible to get people out into the reeser and enjoying a show and feeling safe parking the car. And everything is going up in price. And so to have extremely affordable parking in such a beautiful part of our district is amazing in this particular district in the downtown. So yeah, that's all I have to say on it. Is there any other discussion before we vote on the amendment? Okay, seeing none, will the recorder please call the roll?
Tivnon,
Yes.
Hartmeyer Prigg,
Yes.
Ulvin,
Yes.
Yemi,
Yes.
Vitko,
Yes.
Duggar,
Yes.
Teeter,
Yes.
Kim,
Yes.
Walton.
Yes.
Hassan, yes.
Sorry, Nadia.
The motion carries.
City recorder, just to get confirmation from you, can you verbally let us know that the motion carried?
The motion carried.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, looks like Board Member Duggar, did you put your name back in the chat?
I did. I have another amendment.
All right.
I'd like to amend table 6, I think it is, the bike storage maximum to change from $40 to $10, not to exceed $10.
I second that.
All right, there's a second. Okay, we can open it up for discussion. Is there any discussion on the matter?
I just have a clarifying question. The objective of doing the not to exceed, just trying to understand, I appreciate and sort of agree with what was saying about the 1/10 of the bike size to the parking size. But I'm imagining a scenario where there's everybody who wants a bike in there and it becomes a cluttered sort of mess. To me, supply and demand needs some range. So if the low end is 10 and the high end is 10, I just feel like we're kind of going to end up with a bike mess. Can you just clarify the not to exceed being 10?
Is that for me?
I think so, since you were the one that made the amendment.
Yeah, it's pretty terrible to bike right now in the area, and I think we need to subsidize it. Like to Molly's point earlier, there was one regular, and I honestly have been there a number of times, and I haven't seen anyone there in a bike. And so I think we need to send a message to the community that, number one, this is open and you should use it, especially for transit parking, right? Like that's a pretty big difference for someone that lives in central Beaverton to be able to bike over, and a not to exceed rate of a car 200 versus maybe if I do it on my bike and that's realistic, then that's a pretty big impact on our climate, our transportation, a number of things. So
yeah, and I get the disagreement is not, sorry, let me clarify. The disagreement is not that I disagree with it, but just to me, the fixed price, like if the two are the same or that there's not as much of a range. I think in the other places we're trying to give Molly and team a bigger range so that they can, I think, John, you said it yourself, they're the experts. So to me, I'm not understanding like the not having the range. Like I completely wholeheartedly agree with biking, and I'm a biker and I get it, but I just like, why the not to exceed amount? Because I can also imagine a world where everybody starts biking and the bike room is full, in which case, what do? We have to have a meeting to increase the not to exceed rate on bikes.
Yeah, so our option would be to lower the minimum from $10 to maybe like $5 to give a range, or to increase that top to 15 or 20 to give the range. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, because what I heard Councilor Teeter say that I appreciate is 1/10 of a car. So if it's $80 or $40 on the subsidized rate to $200, then to me the range should be $8 to $20.
Okay. And so, a question for Bill: can I how do I do my motion again? Because I actually think that makes a lot of sense from Board Member Walton.
Well, you can ask to amend your motion. If no one objects, you can do it. If people object, we end up with the problem of, we're now 3 levels into this. But if you want to amend it and no one objects, then you can do it with the consent of the group. But I think the chair needs to make sure that, does anyone object to the amendment to that motion? From what dollar amount would it be to what dollar amount?
I would change it to the 10%. So the range at the low end be 8 and the high end be 20. So the minimum $8 and not to exceed 20, because that was the 1/10 of the car rate.
And with regard to the table that has not to exceed maximums, it would be 20. Is that
Correct.
Correct. Okay.
Yeah.
So the amendment to your motion is to change from $10 to $20, the maximum to exceed. And I think the chair needs to see if anyone objects to that motion.
Yeah, and in 1 second, I will ask that. First of all, I saw the city manager had her hand up. Was there something that you wanted to toss into the mix here?
I just wanted to provide some context around this. I know we need to make a decision tonight, but I also want to be mindful that there are numbers being thrown out with no concrete context around them or unintended consequences. So if the Bureau Board does get to a number that they all want to do, I would highly recommend that staff at some point track this and come back and identify whether that was the best idea to make, because it's an uninformed decision. We're providing rates for you that are somewhat informed, but when we start kind of making motions around rates that have no additional information to back them up, I get a little bit nervous. So I just wanted to put that out there, that if we do move forward, that we track and make sure that we're not shooting ourselves in the foot, so to speak, later on down the road, because we either subsidize something too low and because we didn't have all the information. So just kind of want to try to put a little bit of guardrails up there. I know it's been a while and we need to move forward and make a decision, but I also want to make sure that they're informed decisions and that we're staying at the policy level.
Okay, all right. Yeah, thank you for that. And to go back to Bill's question, does anyone have objections to Board Member Duggar amending his amendment?
I'll just respond here. I'm not going to object to it. I support the original motion still, but I would support that his changes that he wants to make here. In my mind, if we're charging too low and there's a higher demand for people using bike storage, that's one of the best case scenarios in my mind. If we have too many people biking downtown, like that's a major win for how people are accessing the district. So I'd be okay with a much lower fee. I would support Councilor Duggar if he does withdraw it and change it, because I think it's still lower and more preferable than what's in the report.
Board Member Hartmeyer-Craig.
I was going to ask for clarification, but I think clarification is still needed because of the nature of the document. I mean, I agree with city manager's comments here, but also we need, like, the table has a couple places that need to be amended. And so I think we would still need to further clarify the motion for it to be like clear on what we're saying, because the document says that the starting point is $20 per bike in table 5 and in table 6. So mostly I just think we need clarity if we're moving forward with that. But I also would at this point not like to change the bike rates, because Molly and the parking team have come with this recommendation to us.
Okay, Board Member Vitko.
We at TriMet, wearing my other hat for a minute, but not representing that agency, but just speaking on behalf of what I understand there, have an extensive bike and ride program that is highly underutilized and is extremely inexpensive. So I think that going back to what city manager said, I think it's important to stick with what's been established based on the research that's been done by the team. Just because I do know how underutilized it already is in multiple locations throughout the metropolitan area, including Beaverton Transit Center, which is nearly empty every single day. And we charge 3 cents per hour, and from 8 to 8 and 1 cent per hour at other times. Now, the only difference I would make sure I call out is that you can't just leave your bike there. Like, you couldn't do monthly parking all the time. Like, if you were living in the area and was storing your bike there and you just didn't use your bike for a month, you can't do that at the bike and rides. But when we're talking about how it's used as a multimodal option for transportation, we already have significantly underutilized bike and rides in the area.
So I think there needs to be clarification in terms of the question on the table is, does anyone object to the change from what was proposed initially was to amend that bike storage from $10 now to $20? And is there an objection? That's the question I think the chair needs to ask.
Okay, yeah, circling back around to that, is there any objection to that amendment to the amendment?
Okay, I hear none. So it's been amended. Now you can ask the question, and I think this is where you may see some division. Do you support the amendment or not? That's essentially the question we're asking now. So this is to amend the motion. I'll try to recap where we're at. We have an amended main motion. The amendment that has been approved is that the monthly parking for all rates will be $200 a month maximum. There's now an amendment to that amendment, amended motion, I should say, that would reduce the bike storage fee to $20 maximum, not to exceed. And the question is, do people support or not support changing that bike storage fee from originally it's $40 if the motion fails, it's $20 if the motion succeeds. I hope that's clear. If it's not, feel free to ask.
And does the city recorder take a vote on this?
Yeah, it'll be a roll call vote.
Okay, all right. Before I ask the city recorder to call roll on that or call for the vote on that, we have some more folks in the chat. Board Member Duggar.
Yeah, I just want to make sure people, I strongly support this and ask that you all do this. Like there's a message here, I think, and to the city manager's point, I agree, but I also think, like Molly let us know that there's usually one person per month. So if we triple that, we go to 3, that's a rounding error. That's not going to have any financial impact that we need. We would waste more money doing a financial impact than we would ever hope to see any difference. So I get philosophically, and I completely agree. I just think that from a policy perspective, we need to do, we all made a promise to people in Beaverton that we cared about climate. We need to do everything in our toolkit to encourage people to bike and to walk, to bike, to do everything that we can. This is an easy one to me. This is a rounding error in cost, but it also, I think, from a messaging standpoint, it signals to the community what our priorities are and what our values are. And I think it's a really important thing that we make space for cyclists in downtown Beaverton, not only physically, but in our messaging. I think it's one of the reasons I strongly support this.
Board Member Kimmy.
Just for clarification, so you're proposing bike storage to maximum of $20, right? But starting is $20. Well, that's all. What I heard is you're talking about maximum, setting maximum of 20, but
The amendment was 8 to 20.
10 to 20?
8 to 20. We said 10% of the car rate.
Okay, so I just want to clear, is that what's on the amendment right now?
I would say that in my mind, the motion really is, I don't think the 10% is captured in the motion. What I see is in the table that talks at the very end of the resolution, there's the very last line of the table, bike storage 40 is what it currently says. The amendment that is on the table that's about to be voted on is to change that to a maximum of 20.
Right.
And a proposed starting rate of 20.
That's what I'm saying. Starting rate is 20, maximum is 20. That's what the proposed, that's what we're voting for.
That is the motion as it is right now. Yes.
Right. So then the Councilor Duggar, Board Member Duggar wants 8 to 20.
Yeah,
it's not clearly stated. That's what I'm trying to clarify. What are we voting for? 8 to 20 or 20 to 20?
The motion that is on the table is 20, and there was nothing in the motion that related to 8 or 10%, as I heard it.
I believe, sorry, am I allowed to talk, Chair, to clarify?
Yes, please do. If you can clarify things, that would be helpful.
I believe Board Member Hartmeyer-Prigg brought up that Table 5 would need to change as well, and I was under the impression that that's where the 8 would go, because Table 6, I believe, is the maximum, and Table 5 is the going rate. Am I understanding that correctly?
But
I thought she had pointed out that we needed to amend both of those things, and that's why. And I thought that was before we all agreed that I would withdraw and like change the motion. That's why I assumed that was where the 8 would go, but if
Chair,
not, we need to make it again.
Right.
Chair?
I'm a little lost in the wording of all of this right now. My understanding is that unlike the amendment that we successfully passed to raise the ceiling on the rates for the monthly parking, the spirit of this amendment is to lower the maximum rates of monthly bike parking, the ceiling on it.
Right, that's correct.
So it's not so much about the bottom rate, it's about the top rate. Is that correct?
I originally motioned to change that top rate to $10, but board member Walton correctly pointed out that we need to establish a range, and I agree with that. And so the intent was to, just the same as with the car, to give maximum flexibility to Molly, but within a defined range of between $8 and $20. And so that was the intent. I don't know if I did it right. And if we need to like back that out and like do it again, I'm okay with that. Just that's what I want.
Okay.
Let me explain something that maybe is the reason for a disconnect. Is you have in front of you an agenda bill, and you also have at the very last page a resolution. And the operative part of what we're looking at is actually the resolution, not the agenda bill. And I think that what's happened is there's a disconnect, because when you look at the resolution at the very end, there's a table that says recommended not to exceed rates. This is what I've been looking at, because I want you to amend the resolution, not the agenda bill. And the conversations we've had so far have all been amending the resolution, not the agenda bill. I think we've slipped into a conversation about the agenda bill, because when I look at the very last line on the resolution about bike storage, it says 40. I know that there's an amendment right now, a motion to amend that to read 20. The next box over says proposed starting rate 20. I've never heard anything in terms of the motions that have been made so far to reduce proposed starting rate to anything other than 20. That's the disconnect. Right now, the motion is set for 20. We can vote on that motion and yet have another motion to change this proposed starting rate, or we can go through what I call the friendly amendment process, which is anyone object if the motion is now changed to 20 and a starting rate of, I think, 8. That's where we would be at, still making our way towards the main motion.
Okay.
That's what I would like to ask for, a friendly amendment to on the resolution. And I appreciate Bill, you clarifying, because that's super helpful, to change the not to exceed rate to $20 for bike storage and the proposed starting rate to be $8.
Yeah. And then again, we're in that same chair where you need to, does anyone object? And it's really, do you object to the amendment, not the merits of the policy that's behind, underlies the amendment? But I'll leave that to you, Chair.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go at this again. Does anyone object to the rewording of Board Member Duggar's amendment? I'm seeing nothing but head shakes here. I also see Board Member Hassan has put your name in the chat.
I guess so. I am supportive of the 8. I want to, be with our bicycle friends. Are we not letting the 40 there to be flexible? Councilor Duggar, if you could just help me. Like, I feel like 8, I could get on board with 8 to 40.
Am I just allowed to answer, Chair?
Yeah.
I think hearing, obviously, we want to bring this to a conclusion at some point soon. But take one more bite at that apple of making the case for your numbers.
Yeah, it's all around like, and I know this is not setting the rate ourselves. I know that we're giving flexibility, but like Board Member Councilor Teeter said, like, I would love for us to come back in a couple of months, because demand is so high that we can change this. But that, number one, that's probably not going to happen. But number two, like, I think the messaging is really important here to the bike community that we're actually putting a very small amount of money where our mouth is in our efforts to curb to impact climate and things like that. And like it's going to be a rounding error. It's tiny. My guess is we'll probably have less than 10 people take us up on this. So I don't think there's going to be no impact, right? And if we have an impact, then Molly needs to come back to us. I think we'd all celebrate that problem. But I just want to send the message, and I want to create space for those people. And to I forgot who mentioned that. I think it was Board Member Vitko. 3 cents an hour is more than $20 a month. Counted over 24 hours. And so we are offering what we're saying, even the maximum is a slight subsidy for bikes. And that's a really good thing, in my opinion, right? Like that's a place where we want to be as a city. We have to encourage people to bike by putting our money where our mouth is. And this is a very, very, very very tiny way of doing that. So I would encourage us to stick with the 8 to 20. Hopefully that answers your question.
And board member Teeter.
Yeah, thanks. When I consider this, there are two big values at play. One is an equity issue or equity opportunity, where if you do $20 a month over the course of a month, you're looking at $240 a year, and you can get a cheap but dependable bike for that price. If you do 40, it's $480 a year. So over the course of 2 years, you'd have a really nice bike, and that's just not the case for, or it's just not something that's totally feasible for a lot of people who will be biking if we're wanting to target some lower income residents or employees. In my mind, there's also the hope that they will be pairing this with transit passes too, but that might not be the case, and we'll have to see over time. Then the second issue is environmental, and this just goes where I want to be incentivizing people to ride bikes and take transit and walk as much as possible. And if that means we eat a little bit of the cost and have a little bit higher fees for people driving, then that's okay with me, and that's a fair trade-off.
Board member Kimmy.
Sorry for dragging this on. I'd like to hear from City Manager Hariyama about, you mentioned something about going back and staff to put a lot of work into it. What are your thoughts before we make this decision on it?
Clearly the discretion of the board. My only concern is, while I feel like that, the counselors are probably right that there's not an impact, it's just more of the policy perspective, just being mindful about making sure that when you have rates that are recommended before you, that there's thought and data that goes behind that. And we just need to be careful when we start making changes. If you feel really comfortable, and I would look to staff, because this is not my agenda bill, but I would look to staff to make sure that there's no unintended consequences for this particular action before you make a vote. But I don't see it going out to other areas of what's being presented to you today. So I think you're fine. It's just making sure that staying at the policy level and not making decisions that aren't backed by data. But I think you're probably fine in making this decision when it comes to the bikes.
Okay. Well, and I'm going to throw out one last thought on this from a board member of BIRA as well as the council. I am in support of the spirit of this, but I also, your words at the beginning of the meeting really resonated with me, board member Duggar, about being uncomfortable setting numbers and wanting to do more around policy because we weren't the experts here on the numbers. So I'm conflicted because of everything that you said on both sides of it. We do have a retreat coming up soon as a council, and I think we need to start getting super serious about what we are doing about climate response. And so this is like, we can either do little tiny things retroactively, or let's think big and proactively. But on this particular topic tonight, it's my mind immediately goes to inflation in years and years from now of what the costs are. Does if we increase the amount of space for bikes, are we just going to subsidize the whole thing? Like what are the ramifications of that? And why was that number placed at 40 in the first place? So I'm very on the bubble on this one for a couple of different reasons. But I also know that the dollar amount is so low. I don't see that as at any of the rates bringing in substantial revenue for the parking garage. So those are my final thoughts on it. I don't see anyone else in the chat. I think we can take a vote on this one. I just have one clarifying question for the city attorney, which is, once we have voted on this amendment, do we then go back and vote on the original motion that was on the floor, or are we all done?
We're going to vote on the original motion as amended. We'll
Okay.
find out whether it's been amended once or twice, once you take this roll call vote.
Great. Okay. All right. All right. Well, then, thank you for that. And city recorder, when you're ready, please call the vote.
Peter,
Yes.
Duggar,
Yes.
Vitko,
No.
Hassan,
Yes.
Kim,
No.
Walton,
Yes.
Kimmy,
Yes.
Olvin,
Yes.
Hartmeyer Prigg,
No.
Tivdon.
Yes.
You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 yeses and 3 nos.
Motion carries then. So now, if there's no other amendments, you then need a motion to adopt the resolution as amended.
All right.
That's-
Then can I hear from someone who will make a motion to adopt the resolution as amended?
So moved.
Second. Okay.
Okay. I don't know if there's any further discussion, but you just go through the normal routine.
I didn't catch
Okay.
the motion on the second. Could someone repeat it, please?
I made the motion and Vitko seconded.
Okay, thank you.
Nadia hasn't.
Any discussion? All right, hearing none. Will the recorder please take the vote? Call the roll. Which one is it? Really quick. It's late. Is it call the roll?
Call the roll is whether you're here or not.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Roll call vote is I'm calling you down by name.
All right, thanks.
Okay. Kimmy,
Yes.
Vitko,
Yes.
Duggar,
Yes.
Teeter,
Yes.
Hassan,
Yes.
Kim,
Yes.
Walton,
Yes.
Tivnon, Tivnon. Okay, thank you. Hartmeyer Prigg,
Yes.
Olvin,
Yes.
motion carries.
All right, thank you. All right, we're going to be moving on to the executive director's report. Mr. Weinheimer, do you have anything for us tonight?
I think there's a
I believe there's another agenda
Yeah.
item.
I'm sorry, I scrolled too far.
No, it's okay.
Okay, start this over again. I'm getting over a cold too. Our second item tonight is Bureau Bill 2023-63, review and discuss proposed amendments to the Bureau bylaws. Bureau Legal Counsel Bill Kirby, please take it away.
All right. And Tyler Ryerson is going to help me here. Tonight, what we want to do is a work session. No votes. But we do want your input, whether you have questions about the proposed bylaws, things that we maybe have said that you don't agree with or want to change, or something that we haven't included. We will then take all that information and come back at a later date for the actual adoption of the bylaws. So this is just a work session. I think the easiest way to approach this is to allow you to, Tyler will put the bylaws, the clean version of them on the screen, and we'll just take them article by article. And I'll just ask whether you have any questions about the materials. You can go past the table of contents part of it. And I'll just make some brief comments as we go. So go on to page 2, I guess it is where the, yeah, there we go at the top. Tyler, is there a way you can have it be, well, I guess that works. We'll go article by article, not page by page. I'll just start the discussion, but I think, Chair, if you could look for any comments or requests to comment and just allow the dialogue to occur naturally, I would greatly appreciate that. I don't think we need to hold comments to the end. If someone sees something and wants to comment as we go through this, I'd like to just capture that as we go. And then when we get through the entire bylaws, I think the discussion largely, there might be a little wrap up, but we'll be done with all comments. Is that agreeable, Chair? Okay.
Yeah, I'm
Thank you.
monitoring the chat.
Okay, thank you very much. The name and purpose, I don't think there's anything controversial here. I will point out that oddly, this is an urban renewal agency that is called an urban redevelopment agency, but that is actually what it is. So that is why the name is what the name is. The purpose statement, there are some footnotes in the document. That's basically taken from an Oregon revised statute and describes the purpose of almost every urban renewal agency. If there's no comments there, I'll go to Article 2, the board officers, personnel, and committees. Borough acts through its board. You are its governing body. The board has 11 members. 7 of them are the ex officio members that come from the city council, including the mayor. And automatically, if someone leaves the council for whatever reasons, the person that is appointed or elected to their position automatically becomes a member of the borough board. For those of you who are not city council members, you are among the 4 additional members. And this just basically describes how your terms are staggered. And each you serve until there's either an appointment of another person, or if, for example, you resigned or left the region, that would be an example of where we would need someone else. The powers are those that are expressed in Chapter 457, which is the part of the Oregon Revised Statutes that talk about what urban renewal agencies can do in the state of Oregon. And I've identified some of those powers just so that there's some flavor of what you can do as a board, including making contracts, rules and regulations, buying and selling real estate. And you do have also the power of eminent domain, but keep in mind that our plan limits the power of eminent domain by the board. So while you have it, we've limited it further in our charter documents. We do have that the board can delegate management activities to a committee, and you can provide, excuse me, going too fast in terms of the activities and affairs can be delegated to other people. This comes back later when we talk about task forces. And then I'll go on to next, section 2, officers. We have a chair. The chair provides overall board meetings. That's predominantly what the chair does. The vice chair is that person who can step in for the chair should there be any reason that the chair can't serve. The elections, you do that annually. You do it at the first meeting in January. An officer serves until the next election. That's meant so that if for any reasons, we've had this happen before, the meeting in January is snowed out, we can't have the meeting, you're waiting, you're still serving in that capacity because you have not been yet elected. There's not been another election of officers. Vacancies, we talk about how those are dealt with. And then we talk about personnel, section 3. We have an executive director. I think there's been questions in the past about why is the city manager considered the executive director, particularly when it used to be that the CDD director was the executive director. And this is really, you can do it different ways, but this is recognizing that the city manager is in charge of all of the administrative functions of the city. And the city manager could serve directly as the executive director, but also has the ability to appoint somebody as the executive director. But the power of being the executive director of borough resides with, in this model, the city manager, who then makes a decision about who is the appropriate person to delegate that authority to on a day-to-day basis. The executive director's powers basically are in items 1 and 2. You can go on to page 5 now. They're identified there. And then here's the idea that the city manager may delegate the administration of borough to any person, so long as the city manager remains responsible to the board for the proper administration of the affairs that they may delegate to another person. Now, with legal counsel and recording secretary, we have that the Beaverton city attorney is appointed and managed by the city council, serves as the borough legal counsel. As I was preparing for this, I think that we should probably include a provision under legal counsel, similar to what the city manager says. You never know who's going to be in this position as city attorney. And maybe what happens is the power of being the legal counsel for borough should be with some assistant city attorney. And I think you should allow for that. If someone, we can talk about that in a moment, but if someone thinks that that's not appropriate, let's talk about that. But I think the idea of clearly stating that if the city attorney feels that the skill set for being the borough legal counsel is better placed somewhere else in the office, we should allow for that. The recording secretary is basically the city recorder. The treasurer is essentially the finance director of the city. We could think about also the theory of delegating the authority of the treasurer to, say, some assistant finance director. If that's something that you think is appropriate, we can capture that at the end of the discussion here. Committees. You have committees. The first committee you have is the Urban Renewal Advisory Committee. That's called out in subsection B. And that there was one comment that we received that I think is a good comment. We say no more than 20% of the members may reside outside of the city limits. One of the comments pointed out that, well, if you take the number of people that are on URAC and you apply 20%, I think you end up with 2.6 people. And that's an odd number. Do you want 2 or do you want 3? And maybe a better way of approaching this is to have you set a number. Is it 2 or 3 people that could reside outside city limits and be on the Urban Renewal Advisory Committee? That makes more sense to me than a percentage, but that's a point for maybe discussion here towards the end. In subsection C of this article, task force, the idea here is that you sometimes have a task force to do a specific project. You would have that authority, and they have a specific task. There is a provision here, and this is meant just basically not to have task forces become permanent. If a task force is becoming permanent, you need to think about it in terms of what's its function, and maybe it really is a committee of some sort. And so there's this provision that unless you specifically state otherwise, these task forces cease to exist after 12 months. We can talk about that if that's a concern for anyone else. It's not required, as the footnotes say, but it's meant to emphasize that the task force is temporary in nature. We can go on to page 7. All meetings of borough are public meetings, you know that. We have to have at least one meeting in January. The regular meeting is whatever time you decide. We're not going to put it in the bylaws. I think we have a resolution now stating that it's the that sets the regular meeting times. Special meetings are something that can occur. That's when all of a sudden it's a Thursday, you need to meet for some reason, you call a special meeting and give at least 24 hours notice, and that's just not your regular meeting date. You have the authority for executive sessions, which we do regularly. We'll be doing one in a short while. The quorum count is a very basic, a simple majority of the board constitutes a quorum. You can take action. It is important, and this is consistent with state law. If no quorum is present, if only 5 people showed up for a borough board meeting, there's nothing you can do. You have to adjourn. Oregon public meetings law basically says, absent you finding people to make a quorum, you can take no action. Okay, section 7. This is basically the order of business, and it can be modified for particular meetings. It's substantially as follows. One of the things that we heard was the consent agenda. Please have a consent agenda so we don't have to take separate votes. Okay, I see that there's a comment here, so I'll pause there and Chair, whatever you're playing.
I think she's distracted. It's me, so I'm just going to jump in.
Sorry, yeah, board member Hesson.
Like, I'll take over.
Thank you so much, Bill. I actually went through this as I was preparing for tonight. I am curious about this section specifically because it's not in line with our current agenda. Is this newly proposed and not reflective of the past? Is that what the difference is?
Correct. That's correct. And
Okay, so
particularly,
what-
for example, the consent agenda is not something that is in your bylaws right now. And
Okay.
consequently, things that could be bundled up and just one vote would be taken now require separate votes on each item.
Okay, so I think my just one comment, and I don't know if this is a place where you want to hear from others, but I'd love to see a place for like liaison or board updates, like a URAC update, or is there something that another counselor is working on that just like that's something I feel like has been missing in our council, right? Like where we're able to provide each other updates on like things that we work on. So I'll just leave that. And if you want more clarity from me, Bill, or from others, let me know.
No, I think I understand. But excuse me.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I understand what you're asking for is that just an opportunity to board member update is what I would think we could call it.
Yeah. It could be related to public announcements of upcoming events and board member up. Like it doesn't have to be super complicated. I just want to make sure we make space for like if I sat in an impact meeting and needed to let Bureau know about something that was impacting impact, that's the place for me to do it.
All right.
And Bill, I've got a quick question about this section too. It says substantially, or the order of business is substantially as follows. Does that mean we can shift and move that, or that's the specific order of business?
It's meant that you can move and shift it. The fact you're asking the question, I'll make it even clearer.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, okay.
Any other questions? Board member Kimmy.
Yeah, I have a quick one. Regards to the meetings, it says executive, where am I? Hold on. Special meetings are called by executive director, right? So then the regular meetings are set in the beginning of the year. So then if the executive director doesn't want to call the meeting, who can call the meeting?
And this is I'm sorry, it took me a while to get to the where the page. Which meeting are we speaking about? Sorry to miss the point.
Board meetings.
Okay.
Our Article 3 meetings. So who can call the meetings? I don't know.
Okay, with regard to the regular meeting, the board decides what its regular meeting schedule is going to be. And so that's the regular meeting. So
Right.
that I would say that the board is setting that schedule of this is our regular meeting time and place. With regard to special meetings, those are more difficult to call, but the executive director may call a special meeting for the purpose of transacting, the business. It's very difficult for a board to call a meeting under Oregon public meetings laws. It becomes an issue of a quorum getting together to call a meeting. And I don't think you want to have that any person can call a meeting of the board.
Right, that's my question, where let's say there's an issue and we need a meeting, but executive director is not calling the meeting. As a board, you cannot call the meeting. So that means no one can call the meeting.
Okay, I see where okay.
That's where I have a concern, where if there's an issue, what ways can board call the meeting?
Okay.
So if let's say board chair doesn't want to call the meeting, executive director doesn't want to call the meeting, then who can call the meeting? And that's my other question.
Okay. And this is a work session, so I don't have an answer right now for you on that. I think there is a gap here, and we'll come back with a plan to address that. And hopefully that'll meet that need of how to deal with that type of a situation. Okay.
Councillor Kimmy, I would just say that the way that this is written, the executive director is the city manager, and the city manager reports to a large number of the Bureau board. So I would imagine there might be an incentive to, if there is a sufficient number of folks, to respond to that.
Okay.
Okay. I'll go on to section 8 then at the bottom of page 8. These are procedures, and actually I do have a philosophical question about how deep into Robert's Rules of Orders and some of the processes we did today do you want to go to in these bylaws? But I do think that we have the presiding officer can participate in moving, seconding, debating. That is, you're not limited in terms of being chair to participating in decision making, is what we're trying to get to here. Members desiring to speak, this is essentially trying to use decorum as far as you ask to be spoken or called on. We do that basically through the chat, but I think this is essentially that bylaw. Once recognized, you are supposed to have the floor and not be interrupted. There are opportunities if someone's, if the topic is X and someone is talking about something completely unrelated to X, there is a motion to call a point of order would be made to, can we bring the discussion back? That would be a formal way of dealing with some of the things that happen under Robert's Rules of Order and what happens at any public bodies meetings. And then motions to reconsider, this is a standard provision that you need to deal with that promptly at the close of the following regular meeting, and that it has to be someone who's on the prevailing side that makes that motion to reconsider. That's very common. E is absolutely, several people pointed this out, it's truncated. It's not a complete sentence. What I was wanting to say here is a main motion may be amended. We did this tonight, may be amended by substitution, whereby the motion is replaced in its entirety by a substituted motion, provided a majority of the board members consent to the amendment. That's essentially what we were doing with regard to some of these rates, and board member Duggar wanting to fine tune the motion after having made it and having seen some discussion. That's essentially what E is meant to allow for. And then finally, we have information about financial information. Borough is operating with an annual budget, so you go through the budget process, it's subject to audit. And then the amendment of the bylaws, you have full authority to do that at any time, but they do need to be approved by the executive director and legal counsel. Finally, in section 2 of that Article 5, it's the idea of if there are conflicts, how do we resolve conflicts among all the documents? And then Robert's Rules of Order is identified as what we aspire to use to regulate our meetings. And then I think probably section 3B is the most important, to the extent that you ever decided that a rule is getting in the way of what you really want to do, a majority vote. 2/3 of the board members, I should say, can suspend that rule and move forward with a different process. That gives you some flexibility. I know that that's a little fast to go through things, but if there's any other comments, I'm happy to take them. And as I say, we're not voting on this tonight. I'm just wanting to get feedback on any other comments, suggestions you have about the proposed bylaws. Thank you.
Bill, I was just going to say I made my earlier motion so complicated because I knew you were going to need an example for this one. And so,
Yeah, we talked about that earlier, right?
yeah, definitely. It's not that I'm inexperienced. It's, I was thinking ahead.
Okay.
Hey,
Anything
Bill, I just want to give you a shout out. That was a 10 out of 10 performance of walking through something that is by some seen as dry. Very informative and clear and understood. And I just wanted to give you kudos for that. Since it's late in the evening, you kept us all engaged. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. That's above and beyond what I expected. Appreciate it.
Any other comments for Bill during this work session?
Okay. Well, Tyler and I'll go back and make some changes to hopefully improve it. And we'll come back probably next month, hopefully, with a final product. But thank you very much for your time.
All right. Thank you, City Attorney. And now on to the Executive Director's report. Mr. Weinheimer, do you have anything for us tonight?
Yes, Chair, I've got a few things. I'll try to keep it brief because I know we've got an executive session behind this. But did want to highlight a conversation that we had at the July 25th meeting and just kind of wrap that up a little bit because we discussed an agreement we were bringing forward, staff has brought forward about the incubator concept, the retail incubator for BIPOC-owned businesses at the Beaverton Central Garage. We had an extensive discussion about kind of the contracting element of that. And we talked about going back out, getting some additional bids or some other interest, I guess. And we just wanted to kind of wrap that up because we don't have it on the agenda because we were able to get that put back out. We did not get any interest. Now we actually don't have Apano interested in the concept either at this point. So I think we will bring this whole item back for further discussion. I just wanted to kind of give you that though, because we don't have it on the agenda for that reason. We did reach out to Unite and to Meso, and so at some level, just kind of have done some diligence on this. We want to kind of do a little bit more, and I think there's some policy decisions that could be made by the Bureau board. So I just really just trying to provide that context of why you didn't see something you asked to see at the last meeting, and just let you know that staff has been doing some work on it, but kind of unfortunate where we stand at the moment. Another item, I just want to maybe trying to kind of pivot towards better news items. So starting at the maybe not great news and moving upwards on the scale, Restaurant Week. And just wanted to highlight that it is ongoing, September 21st to October 1st, Downtown Restaurant Week. There are plenty of options. Want to encourage folks, if there are folks who are listening or maybe listening later, to partake and really enjoy the downtown restaurants and what they have to offer. Also wanted to talk a little bit about kind of where we stand on the garage and retail space. We've brought many of those items forward to you, so just a quick update on where we stand. Mama and Hapa's, the zero waste shop, is doing tenant improvements currently. The Gray Raven Gallery is has been instrumental in doing art walks on first Fridays. And so we're excited to have that growing the arts and innovation element of the area. We're working on negotiating with a third tenant, a potential restaurant tenant. And we're also trying to do some additional marketing, and kind of ties into the first item a little bit. Then my last item, which is actually maybe not good news, but not entirely good news, but Tyler and I are going to maybe tag team this one. I just want to spotlight Chase Landry, and this is going to be his last Bureau meeting. Unfortunately, he is, well, fortunately for the city, he has taken a position in another division of the city, and will unfortunately be leaving community development department, but moving into another role that really suits him well, and I think will help him achieve some of his career ambitions. We're super excited to keep him and all of his talents, but obviously really sad to lose him on the bureau team and out of the development division. So Tyler, maybe embellish what I just said, and maybe Chase, if you want to turn on your camera.
Yeah, absolutely. Very disappointed, but very excited for Chase. He's actually moving over to the neighborhood program, and so as I stated, his community engagement and communications runs through his veins. And by taking his expertise and the things that he brought to the city back in 2019, just before the pandemic, and all the work he's done on our side of things with all of our projects, all of our programs, and our things that happen in our division and within Bureau, Chase has been the lead of that. And as he moves over to Lanny's group and being able to work with our NACs, it's in his veins. And it's so exciting for me to see him grow into even a cooler spot, but going to be greatly disappointed to see him leave and all the help that he has provided here at Bureau, as well as URAC. And so wanted to make sure that Chase got the proper shout out, because we are going to miss him, but we're super excited that he's going to be able to continue with the city in a really cool spot. So Chase, thanks so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Chase. And with that, I am done unless there are questions.
Looks like board member Teeter.
Thanks, Dan. I've got two questions for you. First, thank you, Chase. I've worked with Chase ever since he started the city, and he's been a phenomenal partner. I wish we had tons more of Chase to go around, but he's got his own limits too. So Chase, I'm really happy for your next steps. We will miss you over here on this side of things. Dan, for you, my first question is page 2 of the executive director report mentions the dining commons, and it says that staff will be coming to the September board meeting to discuss whether the commons should remain open for this coming winter. Can you give any update on what's happening this winter, or is there a change of plans to close it, or what's happening here?
No, I think a little bit of wires being crossed, but also I think we're trying to figure out the future of the dining commons. The direction we got from the council, I think more so in the amendment phase of the budget, was to put money into the year-round operation of the commons. And I guess the word I would use is permanent. And I think we're working on what that actually means, and looking to present some options as to what that would look like. But also trying to understand from the council, from Bureau, possibly like trying to figure out what that will look like long term beyond this year. But I think for the winter, we've made the decision and felt like it was an administrative decision to move forward, given the direction and the funding we received with that amendment, to continue the operations through the winter. But we are working on additional information around what the ongoing costs are, the operational costs, what the implications are for an ongoing permanent facility, what some options might be to make it both permanent and seasonal, if that can be two things at once. But just want to be able to present those options. But for now, that doesn't mean anything about the winter operations. Really, it's about the ongoing beyond this next year.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Then my second and last question is related to page 4. The final item is the downtown parking management and action plan. It said that staff are going to bring an update to Bureau in mid-2023. And I know we just saw Molly, and she's probably been working on the garage stuff. Do we have an update plan for the downtown parking management plan?
Maybe Dan, I can take that one. Thank you, Board Member Teeter. Obviously, that's another one of those projects that you've been following along and helping out over the last few years, not just as a council member, but in your previous roles. And we started up with the parking compliance this year, the parking rates, and so some of those are things that are actually part of the DP map work. And as we continue to analyze and gather data, we will be digging into the DP map even further. I think we were kind of hoping to have this conversation in the summer to early fall, but things are kind of getting delayed with some of the previous actions that have taken place here. And as we're up and collecting data, which is actually really the important part of the DP map work.
Okay, that's helpful too. I will say, just from my own personal observation experience, the enforcement program looks like it's working very well and generating some turnover and getting long-term parkers off the street. And I've also heard some really great things from some of the businesses around there too. So I'll be excited to see some more data.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We appreciate that. And I think the other part is we've been having a lot of discussions with private parking owners who are into that field. And it's something from the counselor hat. We might be bringing various city code updates as we start to think more clearly about private parking lots.
Great, thank you.
Okay, board member Vidko.
I'd like to just embarrass Chase maybe a little bit more. He wants to come back on camera. He doesn't have to though. I just want to extend my gratitude, Chase, to everything that you worked on. Obviously, I've been working closely with you since you came on with the city when I was with the advisory committee before coming to the board. You have brought just a wealth of knowledge. Your approach to things are thoughtful and creative, and you've always solicited and absorbed whatever feedback we give you. You just have made everything you've touched a little bit better. So I'm really happy to hear that you're still going to be with the city and help continue to make things better for us here in Beaverton, and I'm sure of that. But thank you so much for all the support that you provided for both Bureau and the advisory committee over the years. It's been incredible to get to work with you, and I'm excited to see what else you do to just make us that much more amazing place to live and work.
All right. Well, yes, Chase, you have your fingerprints all over Bureau, and looking forward to seeing what you do with the next. Okay. Mr. Weinheimer, do you have anything else for us?
Nope.
All right, thank you for that. We are going to be moving into executive session in accordance with ORS 192.6602E to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real property transactions. Pursuant to ORS 192.6604, it is the Bureau Board's requirement that the items discussed not be disclosed by media representatives or others. We will not be taking any action after the executive session. Our next meeting is on October 24th, 2023. To those who've been tuning in tonight, thank you and have a good evening.